where do we go from here? As we stand right now, things aren't looking very good. Flyers just lose another game in regulation to the New Jersey Devils in ugly fashion. In a sense, it's a game that was definitely within their grasp, and one that they kind of threw away. Yes, New Jersey's playing well of late. I could make the case about most of these games, but this isn't a talent issue. I've talked to it. I know people are messaging me on Twitter. You guys can say what you want, but it's not a talent issue. You're watching, you can see it. I mean, you're seeing stuff happen when Sean Couturier is on the ice. Do you question whether he's good at defense? These things aren't questions. These issues are not based on one player. You're not going to be able to sit there and just pick apart Phil Myers and go, hey, Phil, you're not very good. You're the problem. That's just not true. You know Phil Myers is good. You watched him play well. The question is what's going on? What's going on? What's the deeper issue? Now, the Flyers have fluctuated considerably. They didn't start off the season playing amazing, but at least the results were there, right? There were wins. There were goals being scored. Maybe goaltending wasn't incredible, but it also wasn't terrible. Defense wasn't good, but the Flyers were holding up. I mean, they were getting away with it. And that's a sign of a good team. I mean, we were getting by on talent. Now, that process hasn't necessarily improved so much. The talent doesn't matter as much, right? Because teams' process got better. We're watching teams like the New Jersey Devils. They've improved as the season have gone on. The Flyers have not. They have not improved. Had a difficult time stringing together long stretches of good play. There's a lot of fingers to point at. Overall, if you want to just evaluate the coaching staff, I mean, my frustration with the Lions continue. They did change them at the end to something that I like maybe a little bit better, but I still think I'll be honest with you guys. 2 years ago, Claude Giroux and Sean Couturier, maybe it's 3 years ago now with COVID, Claude Giroux and Sean Couturier Giroux put up 100 points, right? You can say it's coincidence, it's his peak or whatever. It doesn't matter to me. The point is, we know that duo, and include TK in there, you could put Voracek, and obviously we have other options this year, but that duo was highly successful offensively. I understand not going with it to start the season. I understand maybe, being hesitant to even jump to it. But where is it? What are these line combinations? And I like Scott Lawton. I get Lawton, TK, Hayes. I understand they did well last year at times too, but it hasn't manifested into anything. Nothing this year. Little spurts here and there, but literally since they've had these line combinations that they consistently stick to, we've seen the least amount of success, not the most. So I'm a little frustrated with the coaching staff to some degree. Do I think AV is getting fired? No, I don't. I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt. Having said that, next season is a different story, and it depends how the team finishes. I'm not saying I'm jumping to fire him, but we know the situation. I've seen coaches fired for less. And again, it depends how the team finishes. If they barely make it into the playoffs, but they play strong at the end, they could be like, hey, they finished strong. They're heading in the right direction. I need to add a couple pieces here and there. We have an opportunity. That could be the plan. On the other hand, you have a company like Comcast who doesn't wait too long. I mean, we watched somebody like Peter Laviolette, who took a team to the finals, get fired 3 games into a season. I don't think we're looking at that type of situation with AV. Again, I think he is a good coach. We have a good coaching staff. But things are frustrating right now, and I understand that. And sometimes coaches lose the room. It's possible that that's the case. It would seem unlikely to happen so quickly. I mean, it almost seems like it's kind of a perfect storm of stuff that went wrong. But at the same time, it's not really an excuse. I mean, Joel Farabee looks like the best player on the team, and he's a kid. I mean, he looks amazing, don't get me wrong. And I don't know if people are really aware of what's going on with Farabee. I mean, in my perspective, I'm going, okay, maybe this kid will end up being better than Claude Giroux. I didn't think that was going to be the case. Again, if you guys saw what I was saying, I'm like seeing the Simone Gagne type of guy, high-end point producer, two-way player. But the streak that Farabee's going on, I mean, he just keeps getting better and better and wirier. And that was a terrible word. More wiry. He's just getting more physical and able to kind of become more agile in the corners. Obviously, his shot, his goal scoring. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but if he continues doing this, I mean, he's going to be the talk of the league, and as he should be. I mean, he looks fantastic. So Joel Farabee looking good. The defense, again, I'm not knocking any individual player, and I thought Phil Myers actually had better shifts this game. Some really good ones, actually, to note. But just as a team, like when somebody gets beat, the support around it isn't there. Like, if you look at the goals that are given up, these are breakdowns. You're yelling at Phil Myers or Ghost, right? It looks like Ghost get... But that play ended... It was 2 plays before it even got to Ghost that's the problem. It's the speed they come into the neutral zone. If you watch the way the Flyers are playing, they're getting shut down coming in until they're pushing finally at the end. But they're not coming in with a lot of momentum. They're coming in ugly, messy, alone. You look at the Devils, they're walking into our zone like it's not even a problem. These are execution-based issues that are a team-wide problem, and I don't fully understand why there is a problem. Again, my expectations, you can say I'm wrong, my expectations that this was a Stanley Cup contender. Now, having said that, are they out of the playoffs? It feels that way right now, but they are not. In fact, they're one streak away from everybody relaxing. But again, do we see that trend? No. Doesn't mean it won't happen. Doesn't mean it will happen. Let's talk trades. Trade options are out there. I think Chuck Fletcher would be wise to make a deal of some sort. I don't think you need to go out and break the bank. I don't even think that will be necessary. I think a lot of this stuff of high talk is or high value is talk, because this is what happens every year. It's a negotiation. Everybody's going to wait till the last minute, but everybody needs to either shed salary or get what they can for assets. We have an expansion draft coming, and I want to make this call out on this video. This is something I want to give credit to Jamie Baska on this, because me and him were kind of throwing this around. He threw out the name, and I thought back to the last expansion draft. Scott Lawton is at risk here to get traded. It hasn't been talked about, but you look at the way the team is playing. They're not playing very well. He's a good player. He's a UFA. He's part of the core, right? So it's enough to at least rock the locker room, but not too much. He's good friends with a lot of the good players. But again, if you trade him for somebody valuable, like Ekholm, right, in a package deal, then all of a sudden maybe you're, like you can justify moving somebody like him. You have expansion anyway. You're not protecting him as it is. You risk losing him, and do you necessarily need a Scott Lawton more than you need a defenseman right now? No. Doesn't mean this trade's going to happen, but something Jamie and I were discussing, I thought it was very interesting. Last time expansion came around, Lawton was protected, right? This time, maybe he's the guy who's moved, and nobody's talking about it, and that's why I think it's important to talk about. Not because I think everybody's like, oh, that's a crazy idea, and maybe somebody has mentioned it, but it seems like he's most at risk because of his status. He's affordable. He has value. He can play in your top 9 for sure. You can mix him around everywhere. You probably want to re-sign him if you're trading for him, right? You're going to want to re-sign him long term. Now, the Flyers could say, hey, we want a handshake deal with him, because he's not going to get taken in expansion, right? If he's a UFA, why would the team risk taking him expansion unless he already agrees to go there? And at a certain point, most players don't want to do that. He's going to want to stay in Philly, right? Unless Philly deals him and they're going, hey, we're kind of going to move on and we're going to go with Ekholm. You run into problems with that, though, too. You trade for another defenseman that you have to protect. You now have to expose, theoretically, one more defenseman. And you're not really in a position to do that. And then you have to ask yourself, am I dealing one of those defensemen, whether it be Myers, Sanheim, and it's not going to be Provorov. Now, another name I heard, and Fridge is throwing this one out, is Ryan Ellis. And I think that's really important. And I think Ellis is a guy that you do invest in. Now, Ekholm is a good player too, don't get me wrong, but he's their number 3 for a reason, and Ryan Ellis is their number 2. If I'm Chuck Fletcher and you really want to come and ask for a first-round pick and a high-end prospect, not named Nolan Patrick, by the way, I do not believe he's included in these trades, but I do think a valuable young prospect is. I'm sure they're asking for Cam York. They're definitely not going to get him, and if you want to see why, look what's happening with Farabee. Again, U.S. development program. If you know me, you know how in love with that team I am. They're not moving that kid. But there are other players. There's Igor Zamula. There's guys like Jay O'Brien. There's Tanner Lazinski. There's Isaac Ratcliffe, right? There's other guys out there that we could include in a package to get a guy like Ryan Ellis. Now, it could be a first and Zamula and maybe a guy like Scott Lawton. Right, when you look at that package, that's pretty enticing for a guy like Ryan Ellis when you're a team that you kind of think you're rebuilding, right? You get Zamula and the young defenseman. You get another first-round pick to add another defenseman or maybe another player, and then you get Scott Lawton, who's definitely part of your top 9 and part of your future, and a guy who can kill penalties for you and probably part of your team moving forward and will always be a good player in the NHL and probably continue to get better and better. These are the type of deals you usually, when you lose, you get value in mass there rather than equal the deal there. And I think that would be the type of deal. I'm not giving that for Ekholm. Maybe I'll give Scott Lawton for Ekholm, right? Maybe Scott Lawton, a second-round pick. Something like that, I think, would be good value for Ekholm. But we'll see if there's a bidding war of some sort. And again, it depends on the position the Flyers are in. You're not going to get into these bidding wars if you're not a good team. If you're barely scraping by, you're not doing it. You're not doing it. What you're doing, realistically, is taking next year in mind. And maybe you even shed some salary. Maybe you try to acquire assets for the draft and go, okay, I recognize that my team really needs help. I'm going to go through expansion drafts. I'm going to get this headache out of the way. Right? I'm going to lose a good player of some sort. I'm going to free up some cap of some sort, whether it even be Nicholas Aube-Kubel, and it's not much. I'm going to lose somebody, and I'm going to have to do something. Include that with the fact that you have to re-sign some players who are all struggling, so that's going to help you. I mean, right now it's not a bad idea if the team continues to falter. And again, if they start playing better, I would, you got to consider an investment. You want to still fight for the playoffs. It's not over here. I know it seems over. I get it. But Boston's not that far ahead of us. Yeah, teams are chasing us, but we don't know what's going to happen with the teams above us. It's not over. It's not over. Even though it feels over, it's not over. And if you can bring in another player to kind of maybe stabilize the locker room, stabilize the defense, it's possible. And even making it for one playoff is better than not making it at all. Again, it's just depending on what you have to trade to get there. I'm not trading a guy like Nolan Patrick. Again, it's a 17-year investment, 15-year investment when you take a guy like that, a second-round pick. You're not going to give it away because you're having a bad year. You can't do that type of stuff. If you do, you're probably going to pay for it later. Now, there are other times to make trades like that. And again, I'll use the Blake Coleman example from Tampa Bay because they went for a player. They overpaid for him, right? They gave a first and Nolan Foote for a guy, but he was part of their core now. He won them a cup. It's that extra edge they needed to win a cup. They had everything they believed to already win a cup. If the Flyers were at that peak and Nolan Patrick is like a young, that's why you look at a guy like Frost really being at risk. If he wasn't, injured, look at him because he's a guy, he's not really part of the core roster. These are the type of guys you move to try to get better when you're trying to make it in the playoffs. You don't want to remove players from your roster, really. And that's why even the Lawton thing, I get a little concerned with that idea because you're removing a player from the roster. But if you look at the need, and you look at the situation with the fact that Lawton is a UFA and the team is underperforming. If you're Chuck Fletcher, you're going, am I re-signing Lawton anyway? Because the team didn't do very well and I need a defenseman. So, again, these are all things to consider. I think it's not over for here. Again, I don't like the line combinations. There have been some good things, but mostly some bad. We're still not seeing. I expect new line combinations. I really want to see them. I know people don't think it's that serious. I think it is pretty serious considering the lack of offensive production. My light just fell. The lack of offensive production, it can be a little concerning, definitely, but it's really the defensive play that's concerning. That's where you look at it and you go, this isn't a playoff team. And I don't blame anybody for saying it because I don't care if you have talent. I don't care if you have Connor McDavid. Right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sorry. You have to be able to play as a unit together. It doesn't matter if you have 100-point players on your team. If you can't stop the opposition on a regular basis, especially in the times that count, man, this team is killing me this year, that stuff. And we did not do this last year. Yeah, they struggled at points, but there were no blowout losses. These are a complete loss of structure. Even in the playoffs, with Matt Niskanen, there were a loss of structure. It's the structure that is damaged. The pace of play. The breakouts You look at them, they're messy, they're sloppy, they make simple mistakes. A lot of this stuff is avoidable, and you go, this isn't a talent issue. So then you just get frustrated because you're looking at it and going, if it's not talent, what is it? Is it the coach? Is it, you start digging into things, and that's not really our job to do. We're not going to be able to expose that either from just these kind of conversations. Look for something to happen. I imagine there's a trade going to happen. But I will say this, it's not over. It feels over. And I don't blame anybody for wanting to stop watching to some degree because it's painful. These games are painful to watch. Do you want to watch them all the time? I don't want to watch them like this. It's painful. I never want to see a 9-0 loss again in my life. That is horrendous. It is embarrassing. Not just for us, for them even more. You imagine having that kind of day at work and having to show up the next day and be on camera? That sucks. We don't want to see that shit anymore. So let's hope Chuck Fletcher does something. Let's hope hopefully he goes out and he gets a defenseman of some sort. Maybe makes a trade that we didn't expect coming. Again, that Matt Niskanen trade for Gudas was a beautiful trade. Maybe his best move ever as a GM so far. Justin Braun is paying off. He's playing his best hockey since he's been a Flyer. Excuses are not going to cut it. They're not going to cut it when the team is talented. Maybe you need the right pieces, but it's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it for long because the team's going to have to make moves. People are going to want to see some aggressiveness. There's too many assets available. The Flyers are too good. The division is too competitive. The window starts. The window starts yesterday. This season. It's been a bumpy ride so far. It doesn't mean you got to throw everything at the problem. But it's not the way we wanted to start. Let's hope we finish strong. Because I don't want to miss the playoffs. I don't care who's available in the draft. I'm not interested. Chuck Fletcher, fix this team.